Time to get down to part two of Mr. GLOAT podcast, the 48th episode, ladies and gentlemen. Last night ago, guys, I already did part one of this 1.5 hour podcast, but I thought to myself, after I had an itchy nose, I thought to myself, maybe it's probably for the best to do it tomorrow. And that's what I did. And to be honest, guys, I did have a little bit of topics to talk about, which might not have been entertaining, but they're just stories of what I'm trying to do. And even though I don't do long hour podcasts because it depends on how many gigabytes I have on my computer, so that's why I don't do long videos. But yet again, that's not the point, guys. And as when I was trying to create the first podcast, as we're speaking, guys, I was gonna have a couple more topics to talk about before I get to the big thing I would talk about right now. But I was already over time to my 45 minutes, so I was deciding I was going to talk about this tomorrow. And tomorrow is indeed surprising. Because, guys, as for these couple final topics before I get to the real topic of this episode, which that might take 10 minutes for me to get through with this one, this is going to be interesting. With more news to talk about as we speak, on March the 4th by Chris McKenna on www.express.co.uk already put out a story of Dillian Whyte replacement name as Joe Joyce gets new opponent for Manchester fight for his new fighter Filip Hrgovic on April the 5th, after the Dillian Whyte was forced to pull out of their highly anticipated showdown in Manchester. Which makes this a lot more ridiculous because Filip Hrgovic deserved a lot more of a bigger chance than he did. And Joe Joyce, after failing so hard after getting knocked out by a past prime Derek Chisora and have Derek Chisora win that fight, and then come February to defeat you know who, Otto Wallin, and how he became the number one IBF title eliminator and how that became a surprising win. It makes me wonder what Joe Joyce is going to do, because I do question it, because Joe Joyce, I just don't think he has what it takes anymore as a boxer as much as he is, but yet again, it's probably for the best. Like, even though Derek Chisora, he has 49 professional fights, and I'm going to talk about him in some time if I have enough time to talk about this 45-minute podcast. But Joe Joyce, I don't know. Like, he hasn't had a really good win since Joseph Parker in 2022, and then he took on one nobody fight with 21-2 last year ago, months before his Derek Chisora loss, and I just don't know. And if it's true that he's taken on Filip Hrgovic, all I could say is one of these two fighters, their careers are going to come to an end, because like Joyce is now number 18 in the ranks with Hrgovic at number 20. And I do want to give Hrgovic another chance for an IBF title or something like that, because he didn't get the title shot deservingly against Daniel Dubois because of how ridiculous it is, because maybe they just didn't want him to win the belt, which is why the title was not on the line that day on June the 1st. And then weeks later, they gave it to Daniel Dubois, and then Daniel Dubois had the fight against AJ because he's British, and then he was going to fight against Joseph Parker, but he had that drug problem or that illness, whatever you call it. So, yeah, this does question a lot of problems. Why? But as all we can say is we don't know much about this, other than if they say they're going to have a fight on April the 5th, and as April the 5th, I don't know what venue will take place, other than there are a couple, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But Richard Torres Jr. is going to fight in Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas against Guido Vianello on April the 5th, but we don't know if that's what's going to take place, because that's going to be by Bob Arum Promoter, so no dice there. So we don't know what fight's going to take place. We don't know what venue this fight's going to take place, but we're going to try to find out as sooner than later as we speak. So, but yeah, as said before, Hrgovic is 32. He's gearing up for a comeback. After he's suffering from his loss, and now he's taking on his 39-year-old Joyce that might not be in the prime anymore because of it. And to be honest, I can't say much about it other than how anything became possible, because there is a lot of surprising stuff to talk about here, because for some reason, Joe Joyce, as I have mentioned, there is a little bit of surprising things. I will point one thing out about this, because with everything going on, I am still wondering if there's any other boxers out there still performing. I've been waiting for Bakadir Jalilov, number one ranked fighter in the amateur boxing. Hasn't fought since November 17th, 2023. And with 14-0, 14 knockouts, I don't know why he's not back. He's 30 years old right now. And I am wondering if he should box again because now his silver medalist, Richard Torres, is now in the top 25 ranks in boxing. So I am trying to find some actual understanding here, but I am curious to see if we could have a rematch with them because it is going to be interesting, but I don't think that'll ever happen, so who knows. As for Tyson Fury, ladies and gentlemen, the other reports have talked about on March the 3rd by Abby Meehan, which is also by express.co.uk, pointed out Tyson Fury's clear three-world response to big money of Anthony Joshua fight as his cousin, Tyson's cousin Andy Lee, has claimed that the former heavyweight champion is extremely happy in retirement and has no interest in fighting Anthony Joshua. This was 3 days ago, by the way. Where Tyson Fury has confessed that he can't be effed to fight Anthony Joshua or any other boxer following his second defeat against Alexander Usyk, with the Gypsy King ever since he had a dominant force since 2008. Boasting a 27-0 record after he had his draw against Deontay Wilder in 2018, when Fury later defeated Wilder in Acclaim a couple years later. So, however, since his winning streak has came to a halt after 2 losses against Usyk twice this year by Undisputed and Unified in December, and with yet the former IBF heavyweight title holder, or where we have Daniel Dubois there, Joshua isn't convinced Fury will stay retired, insisting a between them has to happen, as he expressed at the Ring Magazine Awards. And at this moment, guys, I don't really see a lot of things about this. And speaking about Tyson Fury here, there is another interesting thing to point out, because 2 days later after that report came in, Fasika Zileam, whatever this person's name, also wrote an article a couple days later on express.co.uk about Daniel Dubois and Tyson Fury's family members' disagreement at Alexander Usyk warning sent, where it says Daniel Dubois has been warned that should he take on Usyk again, he'll need to deliver his power shots against the undisputed heavyweight champion. Peter Fury disagreed with Daniel Dubois' verdict that he was robbed against Usyk, and the 27-year-old has defeated by the Ukraine in their 2023 crash in the ninth round via ninth round knockout. 4 rounds after Dubois floored the Olympic with a controversial low blow. While Dubois was adamant that the shot was legal and above the belt line, it wasn't the opinion shared by referee Lewis Pabin, which is a B, not a D, who gave his opponent ample time to recover, with Usyk spending several minutes on the canvas before struggling to get up in order to continue the fight. The 38-year-old managed to finish strong and ended up knocking out Dubois, who has repeatedly called it a robbery. While the Londoner has gone to win the IBF heavyweight title after sanctioned knockout on Joshua, which is the most deserving win, which I have to say that has to be his legit title win, not Hrgovic, last September, he's on the warpath for a rematch against Usyk, and even stormed the ring after the second win over Fury to demand a second fight. And of course, there is other articles here, but yet again, I'm not going to get to that because it's going to be a long video if I make this. And I'm already at the 10-minute mark of this podcast. But I will point one thing out, whether if any of that could be possible, because at this moment, it is surprising that Tyson Fury's father pointed that out. Because at this moment, I really can't say much about it, because even if we do see a rematch with him, I don't know, because it is ridiculous to just talk about this as we speak. I really can't say whether that it's a deserving feel, but yet again, I don't want to go over there and think to myself that this is worth watching because we already had a knockout win. Dubois didn't capitalize on anything after that loss. At this moment, I do feel there's a lot of problems, but yet again, this will be a long video if I talk about it. The final thing I do like to talk about is the PBA 2025 Tour season. So after Graham Fod defeated Wild, getting high score numbers on the first 3 games of competition, well, he was the number 4 seed, mind you, and surprisingly dominated a bunch of points on the cheetah pattern in the Delaware Classic. But for some reason, Jacob Buttriff barely scored a 200, not getting back his game plan, which means he's still struggling on TV as today, which is weird because the 4 bowlers that were there that never won a lot of titles or won none titles, but Buttriff won 9, failed more than the players that did not win a lot of titles, like 1 or maybe 2 or even 0, were scoring high points of 279 to 230, and Buttriff failed so hard in the title match. There's questions with E.J. Tackett being a 2-time U.S. Open after defeating 2018 Player of the Year of Andrew, if you think it's obvious. But it's great that we have Santu Tavhanyansen winning the Owen, Illinois Classic last February. Surprisingly, how he scored a lousy of a 180 score. But Bill O'Neill had problems, and he scored over just 150, barely scoring half the pins in that final match. But still, for a good country from Finland to get their first title, and E.J. Tackett being the Pete Weber Missouri Classic is not bad. But the problem is, guys, the title matches are so dominant, it just goes to show you how hard it is. And speaking about Bill O'Neill and some of the things that he's been through, he would help out with him and Jason Belmonte to win the Roth Homans double. And surprisingly, even though they barely scored a 210, which is not a good title match for them, but their opponents just didn't do good neither that show, which is kind of crazy how they made it to the finals. But yeah, Jason Belmonte wins his first title in a long, long time since March the 19th, 2023 in the Tournament of Champions, winning several straight titles. Almost 2 years, and he finally wins one. He's been having problems on TV after his Player of the Year in 2022 that we're wondering why it's so hard for him to get an 8th PBA Player of the Year. He's still a young lad. Well, he is 41 years old, but I still think he has a chance to become an 8-time winner, and he might win another several more titles to get 40 or so. He might not break out the record, maybe close to Earl Anthony, but I don't think he'll make it to Walter Ray Williams. But depending on when he gets to his 50s, might make him a big threat in the PBA 50s, depending on how long the tournament will go. We already had the Mike Albee Nevada Classic will take place in Reno, Nevada on March the 15th by the World Series of Bowling. And guys, I also heard reports that we have females in the PWBA now performing in the World Series of Bowling. By the way, Liz Johnson did play in the Delaware Classic, but finished second to last by Ronnie Russell. So we have some girls performing in PBA, which I hope, because their tournaments don't start until May and they end until August, and there's not a lot of TV time. And I don't think, like I said in my last podcast yesterday, talking about should girls perform against men in golf or maybe in bowling, yes, but in racing, NASCAR, I do question that. But in boxing, professional sports, or MMA, no, that's ridiculous. And I hope you people don't think I'm offended by that, but I'm just saying, if girls want to perform there, that's fine, but let's just be precautious on what sport we're talking about as we speak. But yeah, I hope we have a female, or maybe Liz Johnson or anyone else, or even a Player of the Year, the PWBA Player of the Year, Sid Jane can come out or get a surprising victory. Let's just hope, because like I said, on March the 16th, we have the Scorpion, March 17th, the Viper. I'm happy for that. I'm happy that the Chameleon pattern's back on the 18th, and 19th, the Shark. And the World Champion will be on March the 22nd, so good luck for that. And the other titles will be USBC Masters on March the 30th. And they do have preliminary rounds, so the prelim round, so that'll be surprising. And the month of March will be Players Champion, TOC, and that's it. And, of course, they have some Elite League in April and other Cuba AMF All-Star in April as well. And then May and April to May, they'll have playoffs. And then in June will be the tour finals. And, of course, the rest. Like July the 27th will be the mixed doubles and not on TV, bowl TV. And then Lucky Larson on August the 31st, the last title. So yeah, it's just going to be 8 months. It's not going to be a long tour, so they're just going to take it easy this year. But you know what? It's great that they're bringing these other classic titles back on TV, like the Pete Weber Classic, the Owens Classic, Delaware Classic. I'm happy that they're bringing those other titles back that doesn't involve World Series of Bowling or majors, because that's the stuff that we've been getting since the 2021 and 2022 and 2023 season. So I'm happy that they brought those tours back in 2024 and 2025, and I'm happy for Graham Thaw winning his first title in a long time, and Santu being the first Finnish guy from Finland to win a title way past Mika Koivuniemi. So it's great. So it's amazing. And even though EJ Tackett's already throwing out a lot of surprising wins here, it's going to be interesting to see who will bring the win. So yeah, I'm going to be happy to watch those tournaments, which is going to be great. So anyway, guys, the last piece I will point out is going to be surprising because it makes no sense for me. Because as of right now, I always try to understand the circumstances of anything going on, because as of right now, there is some surprising things here. Because it is surprising that Alexander Usyk's fight probably not happening as Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua lined up ever since they were they're like I'm just surprised that we have photos of AJ and Usyk taking photos together, and they were there when they were the man. Like Usyk was the man to beat the heavyweight division, and Joseph Parker, who wants to face the Ukrainian, that he will be at the back of the queue, which is interesting because the interim WBO champion has admitted that he has no faith that a fight against Usyk will be available for him. And to be honest, I don't like. I hate to agree with Joseph Parker, and I don't want that to be the fact. But he knows that there's no way that he'll have a fight against him. And of course, if Usyk does have any problems with his career as he's coming past to his prime, and even though he will have a fight, someone said that he'll have a fight in September, and probably in 2026 he'll have one more other fight. Because like I said, he is 23-0, but I am expecting him to have a couple more fights left in him in his career until the day is over. Because like I said before, guys, just keep this in mind. Alexander Usyk, because if I have told you people before, and I'll say it again, Alexander Usyk was born around January 17th of 1987. And he's 38 years old. Next year, he will be 39 years old, and he'll pick up the pace for that. Because when he wins the fight, if any other fighters on board, because I don't think we're going to have another undisputed fight with him and Dubois. But as we can point this out, because anything can go wrong, as boxing is for certain a tough little sport for us to conquer. Because keep this in mind, because when you viewers look at this as a perspective of all of the world champions in all boxing, quite frankly, because I see more than just a lot to bear here. Because, like, for instance, Vladimir Klitschko was around March of 1976. And by 2015, in November, he was already over 39 years old when he lost against Fury. And they were going to have a rematch in June of 2016, which was he was going to be 40 years old. So I do question that whatever happened to Vladimir, it might happen to Usyk. So if Usyk does retain a win here in 2025, and then maybe barely at 39 years old, which is interesting because Vladimir Klitschko did have another fight in April, 1 month after he turned 39, when he defeated Brian Jenkins in Madison Square Garden, which was his last win. So maybe possible in 2026 he'll have a win, because it depends on his age factor and what his body's telling him that might say father time is up for him. But the thing is, I do see he might have a couple more fights left in him, in my opinion. It's just 2026 might be the year that we might as well hang up the gloves because I think when he's 25-0, that might be it. So that's my opinion, but we'll have to wait and see in the future as we speak. But for now, let's just stick with it. All right, guys, the final topic, which might take 25 minutes for me to get through, and I was waiting for this topic the whole way, and now all I can say is this has been a little bit surprising because, guys, yesterday when I was on BoxRec and I was clicking on follow, I still remembered they still have the fight on May the 3rd in Saudi Arabia where William Skull, IBF champion, is going to take on Canelo Alvarez for all of his gold for another undisputed fight. That's going to happen. And we're already knowing about Terrence Crawford, as I talked about yesterday, where Terrence Crawford weighed 186, which I didn't know that last month ago. I didn't know that until yesterday. So that got me fooled. But yet again, guys, the real story is going to be interesting because as I just looking up this information right now, I clicked on it and I found Amanda Serrano having another fight on July the 11th in Madison Square Garden. The fight being Katie Taylor for super lightweight again. At this moment, guys, I do think to myself, Amanda Serrano has put in a lot of work here, but here's the thing. So in April of 2022, Amanda Serrano, she had problems in some fights of this, and Katie Taylor went out barely a few rounds in the first fight and had some interesting offensive in the first few rounds. And of course, Katie Taylor took her on mid-rounds in that first fight, like probably around round 4, 5, 6, and barely winning 7. But then Taylor came back in round 8, 9, and barely squeaked out round 10 a little bit. Well, I think she definitely won round 10. She definitely did. Just round 3 was barely a close round, and I thought, well, Katie Taylor might have been. I think it would have been 95-95 if I would have thought maybe Amanda Serrano won the third round. But I gave it to Taylor for it. But I didn't want that to happen. But yeah, and then of course they had their rematches. We had undisputed titles and other fights because by featherweight standard, months later, Serrano became her undisputed. And of course, we had problems with Katie Taylor because she already lost. Because after her win against Serrano, she won in October and against someone else, but then lost against Chantal Cameron in May. But they had a rematch in November, won the title back, and then we were about to have this rematch a full year later after that. So at this moment, I was like, how ironic is this going to be? Because it seemed like it was going to be an easy fight. And out of nowhere, Serrano comes out, hurts her opponent. And I did thought she won round 2 as well, bearing that round, even though round 2 was a tough round. But I thought Serrano won that round. And then out of round 3, was a round for Taylor, quite frankly, and then round 4 was probably barely a Serrano round. And then there were problems with head movements with Serrano. She never had a lot of head movements as much, and the fight was so tough because there were so many hard rounds for me to give because I just didn't know who was winning the fight after the first 3 rounds, and even round 4 gave me a hard time. There was a lot of hard problems in that fight. Like, I thought Taylor won round 5, and then maybe I thought maybe she might have got round 6. Like, I had a little bit of round 7 being another Taylor round, which was hard enough for me to watch. But then in round 8, after they had a little bit of a point abduction because Katie Taylor was abducted a point, and Taylor and Serrano did come back hard in that 8th round, even after and before and after getting headbutted by Taylor, and she got point abducted. So that was like a 9-9 round, but I thought Amanda won that round, so I gave it a 10-8. It's weird because all the other judges gave it a 10-8. So yeah, take that for what you will. Meaning that it was already 4-3 by 1 point abduction because all of us judges like myself gave Amanda Serrano 10-8, meaning Taylor lost not just a point in a round, but lost another point, meaning the score after 8 rounds, it was, in my opinion, 4-3. And then round 9, Taylor came out, won the round cleanly a little bit. And then the final round, Serrano came back strong, finished the fight strong, and won. I had 95-94, but weirdly, all 3 other judges had 95-94 for correcting Taylor. And it really did got me because I did saw a video online of someone interviewing Clarissa Shields and her talking about she had no chance, this or that. She lost. Taylor deserved to win the fight. I was like, go F yourself. Because it was so bad. Because in the 10th and final round, keep this in mind, in the 10th and final round, Judge Nathan Palmer already had it 86-84 favoring Taylor the win, which means that if he did give the 10th and final round to Serrano, the score would have been 95-94. The other 2 judges had it 85-85 even, and they decided to give it to Taylor. But I knew Serrano won that fight, and you're saying Clarissa Shields said that she lost the fight? Go F yourself. That's just retarded to talk about. No, it's just ridiculous. I don't know why the fight was given no trilogy there. It's just so bad that a month later, Usyk did that as well and cost Fury a trilogy, and same for AJ. And it might be the same for Daniel Dubois because I just don't want to see a rematch with him. It's just ridiculous. So, and now they're going to have another 3rd match for July, and if Taylor wins that fight as well, who knows? Here's my thought, guys. Here's my thought. I think what I'm looking at is something more than just a little bit of understanding here, because I'm seeing something more than just a little bit of a nostalgia here, because as undisputed for champions, because as of right now, we have to understand, because as I said before, guys, Taylor was undisputed at one point, and she became undisputed back, and Chantel won, and this or that, blah, blah, blah. And then Serrano became featherweight champion. But here's my thing. When it came to a little bit of a championship hope here, because in history of champions, Amanda Serrano is the first and only lady to become 7 weight class champion, even one behind with Manny Pacquiao as an 8 weight class champion. She was super featherweight, lightweight in 2011, 2014, 2016. She was featherweight, super bantamweight that same year, bantamweight in 2017, and 2018, light welterweight. And then became super flyweight by that first round knockout in 2019. But as for everything else, I do thought to myself, the heaviest Amanda Serrano has ever weighed in her career is 138 pounds. And at this moment, she's going back to this weight class. And I'm like, why not just go to welterweight and fight for an 8 weight class? Because I really want to see Amanda Serrano fight Michaela Mayer, or even try to pick out a win against some tough females like Natasha Jones, or even, surprisingly, Lauren Price. I do want to see that type of boxing, or even Emma Cousin, another world champion that hasn't been active for a while, but I do want to see her to be in another weight class and probably weigh 140 pounds over, and probably see if we can see that. But who knows? I don't know if that will ever happen, but I do want to see some changes here or there, as for the heck of it, because it's I do feel like maybe I really want to see that instead. But who knows? If she does win the fight against Taylor, who knows? But a loss again is just a laughingstock. So why not just forget about this weight class and just go to welterweight? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, guys, let's talk about the other undisputed fights. And like I said before, guys, as for undisputed fights, as we're talking about, April the 5th, also the same day for whether we have heavyweight titles, this or that, and like, who knows, guys, because this one right here this one's going to be interesting. Tina Rupacek versus Samiri Yamanaka. So the story about the atomweight division is this. Samira Yamanaka wins her 8th match in January last year against Mika Iwakawa. Wins the IBF World Bantamweight Champion. But then she was going to take on Fabiana Baitik. But then she had a sick problem around November the 23rd during the same show for the other unified atomweight titles. But she got sick. Senicia Strata and Tina Rupachet was the first history that might have been the cause of Tina Rupachet's career. In March of 2023, she loses against Senicia Strata by utter domination in the United States in her career. And at the end of the day, I can't say much about that. So by January the 13th, around that time, with those other titles, and also in some other place, because this is during the time with when Iri Matsuda and also Yamanaka were winning titles, because, like I said, on Iri Matsuda was the WBO and also fight for WBA Unified Champion in January the 12th, the same show for Samiri winning IBF. So the Japanese already took on a huge winning domination in the atomweight, and they wanted to make it big for undisputed. And Tina Rupachet might be throwing it away, because in a day later, on January the 13th, she defeats Fabiana Baitiki by decision, wins the WBC, and now she fights for WBO and WBA on November the 23rd against Iri Matsuda and wins the fight. And I did have the fight 95-94 by 5 rounds to 4. Buried by Tina, but some judges had it 6-6, 96-93, and one had it 97-92. And the first round knockout that Matsuda did not take the fight seriously in the beginning part did cost her a problem there. And you look back at it, it was a problem, and I just hope Samira Yamanaka won't play that same problem, because, guys, here's the thing. Tina Rupachet, 5 foot, she's 32 years old, orthodox. Also, Samira Yamanaka, also southpaw fighter like Iri, 4 foot 9 inches and a half, 58.5 reach advantage, 23 years old. And actually, all I could say is, like, just because you might be a young fighter doesn't mean that old and wise boxers could do better than the young fighters. So Tina Rupachet can almost put out an easy win here, but what makes this fight more easy of a win is that Tina Rupachet could actually win, because in November the 23rd, she defeated Iri Matsuda in her country. And people were wondering where they were going to have this undisputed fight. Well, guess what? Back in Germany again. So it seems like the Japanese are going to fail this one because they couldn't get a spot in their country against Tina Rupachet. And Rupachet's already had problems after her loss in America 2 years ago. So there's problems with this, but I am going to make more videos right now before this time comes, just to get to some information here and maybe get some help and advice to see if we could get this fight going, because it seems like Samira Yamanaka might not know what she's getting herself into, but I do want to give her luck and a little bit of advice to see what she has to do and not make the same mistake what happened to her friend that lost that night against Tina Rupachet, because Iri did fought hard at the end and did 1 rounds in that fight, like 3 rounds or even 4, like 4 rounds. And I did thought she might have won 5 rounds for how close the fight was. But yet again, that knockout in round 1 is what cost her the entire match. So I do want to give advice that maybe we have to be more precise as time goes on. And there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. You have to understand that for anyone else watching, we have to understand that the entirety of this is going to be interesting. April the 5th, 2025, undisputed atomweight championship. Tina Rupachet, 14-1-1, taking on Samira Yamanaka, 8-0. Because I see this being more of a fight that we have to understand whether she has what it takes. Because if her friend could barely squeak out a win, maybe it's possible. But the Japanese have already lost 2 titles, and now they're going to lose undisputed if Yamanaka doesn't get the win here. And even though Iri Matsuda is 30 years old, 5'2", southpaw, and 62 reach advantage, so she had the more older and wiser. But does it depend on how young you are or how old you are to box against the competition? Well, that might play a factor into this. And I'm not saying that younger could be the best, but by her height, I do want to wish Yamanaka the best she can because Tiny Timmy does have problems when she had a fight when she lost against Sinicia Strata. But now she has to fight this way to learn from her mistakes. And I think that's something Yamanaka has to play a fact in. We have to understand what we're looking at here. And I'm going to make more videos of this as we speak, as time goes on. It's not, there's no going to be no podcast about this, but I am going to put out advice and other videos in the future as time goes on. So let's just keep that in mind as we speak. But even though we're only 9 minutes away until this podcast is over, so let's not get to that yet. But I'll talk about this undisputed fight and other times as in the future. But for now, not yet. So as for a light heavyweight champion, we already have interesting talk here. So Dimitri Bivol might give an Artur Beterbiev rematch maybe in the fall this year, and David Benavidez does not want to wait any more time. And as I said before, super middleweight, Canelo Alvarez is already going to put himself in the line with William Skull and Azpikit. Now, I will say though, good luck with this fight if we have a win here and if we're undisputed. The undisputed fights are already going to take interesting amount of toll on who is undisputed as time goes on. But yet again, with all this being said, I am going to try to throw in a lot of understanding here that there is going to be some interesting fights here that might bring out some interesting, tough competition. But not much to say anyone might have a chance for a world champion, but let's not get over our heads here. The middleweight division has already brought in surprising facts here as because the middleweight division has already haven't had a lot of competition as much, and we don't know if we have any undisputed champions because since Jermaine Taylor is still the last undisputed champion in the 3-belt era, or they would call it the 4-belt era because the WBO was a thing with their Hopkins fight and Taylor back then in the 2000s, so who knows? I am curious to know if they still have anything less into them because like Erislandy Lara is still into the WBA win here after his Danny Garcia win last September, and the Garcias are already down the toilet. We already have a Kazakhstan boxer that's still IBF and WBO, and he's 16-0, Zanabek. And mostly, is he WBA, I guess? I don't think he's not. But yet again, and even though we still have Carlos Adams as he's still WBC champion, so any of those fighters that might battle for undisputed, I think the Kazakhstan boxer is unstoppable here. Like if we do have any interesting title fights here, I think, but yet again, it's been now 20 years since when Jermaine Taylor already vacated the IBF title back in October 11, 2005, was already the end of that undisputed fight. So it's almost been 20 years, and we're trying to look for another undisputed fight for the middleweight. And those are the only 3 boxers that have became champions. So still questioning about whether anything is possible. And even though Jermell Charlo already had his 2022 undisputed win in welterweight, super welterweight, that doesn't include the welterweight any different than it is because as of right now, with anything going on, quite frankly, because ever since Terrence Crawford already vacated out his belts, as we speak, there's still some time to understand what we're seeing here because even we don't know if anything else in any other welterweight division or other weight class is going to have undisputed this year, but we're going to try our best to see who, if anyone has what it takes to find undisputed champions here. But yet again, guys, I really don't know what to know much about this other than whether or not anything is possible. But yet again, at this moment, I'm still waiting for another undisputed fight as we're speaking to know who has what it takes. And just like Devin Haney and his lightweight division 2022, who knows? Now, even though, guys, I already have 5 minutes left of my podcast, so I'm just going to start rambling everything else I can talk about because at this moment, this is the end of the line here. So, now, as for everything else, guys, I can't say much about anything other than about the lightweight division. And even though that is already becoming a little bit of a talk about thing. Oh, yeah, and by the way, there's information of people saying that they're already that they're trying to change the rule of the New York Athletic Commission, talking about that they want to change the fight with Lamont Roach as a draw to a win for him and give Gervonta Davis his first professional loss. We don't know if that's possible, but yet again, that will cause a little bit of a breakout there in the future. Shakur Stevenson, WBC, and Vasily Lomachenko, IBF, followed by a little bit of a WBO champion in the welterweight. Light welterweight, quite frankly. As Keyshawn Davis. I can't say much about that as for a fact. Now, as for anything else, guys, in the division, there is one other undisputed fight I still want to talk about, and that is the minimum weight division. So, Oscar Collazo, number 1 ranked, great fighter, defeated out Thamanoon Nyamtong in the mini Rumble in the Jungle, as I talked about last November, and he became WBA, and now he retained the WBO. And at this moment, we might see a minimum weight undisputed fight. Now, as for the other champions for IBF and WBC, IBF champion Pedro Tendrin is already in the marks. Ever since his win against Jinjiro Shigeoka last July, I don't know much about where he's going to go. Melvin Jerusalem, WBC, is going to fight against Shigioko's brother Yudai for it in March the 30th. And that might be another win for maybe the Japanese, who knows? But all we can say is that for whatever reason, there is going to be a little bit of payback here in the future to know who's going to win the fight, because at this moment, it's going to be a little bit of a tough fight. Because Melvin Jerusalem already lost against Oscar Collazo last May of 2023. He's won out a fight. He won back the title against Yudai, and now he's having a rematch with him by that controversial split decision March the 31st, which is also the same show that cost their Japanese heavyweight boxer, I think. Yeah, Mitsuru Brendan Tajima, and how he lost against Alexander Jur, and I still can't get over that because now his career's dead. Another Japanese guy is dead in the heavyweights. It just goes to show you that Asian boxers are just having hard times in life in this top division. And it just goes to show you it's really tough to watch this stuff. So at the end of the day, I really can't say whether anything is possible, but if Melvin does get a rematch with Collazo, it's already going to be another loss here. But if he wants that WBC belt so badly, he might as well fight for it. But if Yudai wins it back, who knows? But they might get a trilogy fight for it. So I do want to see Oscar Collazo win against Pedro Tendrin, or even go to his country and fight for the title or something and try to get something there. And because at this moment for the rankings, it's going to be interesting and tough. And he's still a young dude, just like Tendrin. He's 28 years old, just like Collazo. And I do want to see a little bit of an undisputed fight here. So we'll see what happens if that fight does take place. But who knows what's going to happen as time goes on. So guys, next week, I'm already thinking about preparing for another video, guys, because on March the 15th, I'm going to do another top 3 fights of a single boxer's career. And the next one is going to be really interesting. And all I can say is the history of this boxer, this might take a full 1 hour to talk about. Believe me, guys, there's going to be a lot of information to talk about next week and who I'm going to talk about, so prepare your ears. It's going to be interesting. As for March the 20th, which will be the first day of spring, will also be my 50th episode of the GLOAT podcast of my 1-year anniversary, so stay tuned for that. And I am making a YouTube channel called Mr. GLOAT, so it's going to be interesting to know what's going to happen as time goes on. So with that being said, thank you for watching the GLOAT podcast. And with that being said, see you next time.